And now, please welcome the founder of G Adventures, Bruce Poon Tip.
Wow. Oh, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Okay, I don't have my slides here. Let me see what if I do. Great, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Skift. It's almost where you're pulling into the end here, guys. Life is not about the destination, it's about the journey. So this is, most of you have probably read this from Emerson. This is one of the most quoted memes in travel that people use in their signatures. And really what it's saying is how important the destination is. And I think that the travel industry has followed this meme, and the journey suddenly becomes more important than the destination. This is kind of highlighting the fact that the destination is no longer relevant and how the journey is so much more important. And in 2013, I wrote a book called Looptail. And Looptail was a New York Times bestseller list, on the New York Times bestseller list. And it was a book about how when you do good with travel and you encourage people to do good, it unlocks the potential of travel to be a force for good. That travel can actually be a transformational industry, and us as an industry can finally embrace our ability to be that transformational industry. And during the pandemic, we had another book called Unlearn. I wrote another book called Unlearn, which was a free book, which is an interesting idea to put out a book that was for free and convince Amazon and Apple Books to give away a free book, which Apple was able to do it. Amazon had to charge a penny in the background in order for you to download that book. And Unlearn was really a month after the pandemic. If you can remember when the pandemic hit, we all kind of were flooded in our inboxes about, with everything we've ever bought, giving their statement about COVID. Suddenly this t-shirt that you bought online on Instagram was telling you everything's gonna be okay, we're gonna get through this together, we're gonna come back stronger, all of these things. Every company was putting out a statement about COVID. And I knew that I couldn't write that because I really didn't know. When we all went home on March 13th, in 2020, we thought it was a 2-week break, right? We thought we were going home for a couple weeks and then we were all going to come back. And so a month later, and after we're all kind of dealing with government programs to keep the employees that we want. For those of us who have international companies are dealing with multiple governments around the world with aid programs. And then we're starting to lay off people because we're realizing this is going to go longer than 2 weeks or a month. And so I wrote a letter to our customers that went a bit long. It ended up going 9,000 words. And I thought, well, this is no longer a letter to our customers. And we released Unlearn as an Instabook that was for free. You can still download it on unlearn.travel, or you can go to Apple Books or Amazon and look at Unlearn. And it really is a message of hope on how the travel industry, coming out of COVID, has the opportunity to be something so much more than what it was before COVID. And I want to thank Skift because we got an Idea Award this year, and I think earlier today they played our trailer for The Last Tourist. The Last Tourist, I think, has gone through the pay-per-view circuit in the United States and is now available on Hulu if you have Hulu in the States. And The Last Tourist is a message of hope, but it's the same message about how we were forced into this pause, into this hibernation over COVID, and we have the opportunity to come back better. And there's this push right now to come back to normal. Like when all the messages were coming out right after COVID, it was people pushing back to normal. And our message is very simple. We started a whole bunch of meetings and conferences called Retravel about coming back better. And how can we come back to better? How can the travel industry take this opportunity to stop and think about how we can do things better on the other side? Because my argument today is that prior to COVID, I don't think the travel industry was in a great place. I just don't think it was in a good place. I'm going to talk more about that. Prior to COVID, if you could just go back there, we had, the word over-tourism was starting to take hold. We had, locals protesting tourist invasions. We had Greta Thunberg, who was, coming out of Sweden talking about flight shaming and carbon emissions, right? But not only that, us within the travel industry were selling tourism as a commodity, selling travel as a commodity. Experiences were being commoditized. It was no longer, we were listening to that Emerson quote, where it was the journey was so important, but the destination was irrelevant. And that's a very dangerous place to be if we're in the travel industry. And if you go back to where we were, we're selling amenities and capacity within the travel industry now. There's this constant push for infinite profits in the travel industry, and so there's constantly building bigger ships, more and more compound resorts, and there's a constant push in the industry for what and it's not working with what local people want. And so, this idea that people are now buying amenities when they travel is really dangerous for us in the travel industry, where, if you open any brochure, they're talking about the 10 restaurants and 10 types of food you can eat, the swim-up bars, the thread counts on sheets, the entertainment, whether it's a Broadway show, indoor surfing, and so people are now buying amenities, and the destination is no longer relevant. So we're living up to that Emerson quote that says, it's all about the destination, and now the journey is, or it's all about the journey, and the destination is no longer important. And if any of you have friends on social media, because social has taken such a big part of our marketing these days, you'll notice that the people that go on these trips, never mention the destination when they send pictures back. Quite often they'll send pictures of their food, what they're eating. And if you don't have a friend, if you don't get those things, you're probably that friend who posts socially about their food. And it got so ridiculous prior to COVID, there was actually a company that decided to put a go-kart track on an Alaskan cruise ship. This is not a doctored image, this is true. This is a true image. So you can go on holidays and you don't have to give up your aggressive go-karting hobby. And now this can be anywhere. And the destination is no longer important because you're now booking and the experience is not relevant and the destination is not important. And so I think that's a very dangerous place to be. And just prior to COVID, I don't think the travel was in a great place. As I said, we had all of these forces against us. People were questioning even getting to destinations with the use of fossil fuels and carbon emissions. And then on top of it, we in the industry were selling capacity. We were selling amenities. We were no longer making the destination relevant. And as we kind of, push to, hotels become commoditized. We're stripping away the relevance of destinations by making people comfortable. And we always said in our first brochure, G Adventures, back in 1990, we said if you want the comforts of home, maybe you should think about staying at home. If you're going to go on holiday, you should actually feel you're in that country. And now what's happening in the industry is hotel chains are trying to create a unique, a commoditized experience. If you look at the Oman hotels, for instance, no matter where you go, if you're in Bali or in South Africa or you go anywhere, they're promising you the same experience. And so somewhere along the way, we confuse the idea between comfort zone and comfort. And we're stripping away the relevance of destination to protect people's comfort zones, as opposed to really comfort. And suddenly, thread counts on sheets become something that's relevant and important, as opposed to the destination where they're going. When we strip away the relevance of the destination, what do we have really? We have a comfortable hotel that can be anywhere. We call this the McDonald's effect. And the McDonald's effect is, McDonald's really isn't a restaurant. McDonald's is a real estate company that promises consistency, that the Big Mac tastes the same, whether it's in Moscow, Singapore, Buenos Aires, or Miami. And so no matter where you are in the world, you have that comfort of knowing that when you come into a McDonald's, you're going to get that same taste and you're going to get that same experience. And when we take that into tourism to give people, to protect people's comfort zones, I think it's the complete opposite of what we should be doing in the travel industry. We shouldn't be protecting people's comfort zones. You should be prepared to leave your comfort zone when you decide to travel. And that's really what makes a remarkable experience. And what we do is so emotional. The travel industry is one of the most emotional purchases people can purchase. We have a beautiful industry, and we sell people dreams, and it's an emotional purchase. I spoke to Reed Hastings, who started Netflix. He's made Netflix into this romantic brand when it's just video streaming. It's the most boring thing in the world. Jeff Bezos did it with selling books. And they create brand, attachment to something so boring. We have the benefit within the travel industry to be selling an emotional experience for customers. And we don't take advantage of it if we continually push people and protect their comfort zones. And it's not about people being uncomfortable. People think when I talk at these things, it's about camping or roughing it, or that luxury can't be comfortable, but it isn't. It's about the destination and focusing on the destination and people having purpose in where they go and where they travel. And we in the industry play into it. The problem that we have in society in general is we're addicted to convenience, right? We are addicted to convenience. And this pandemic made it worse because people were forced at home and we realized how much we can do from the comforts of our own home. And so we got used to that. And so we pushed more and more people. And that's, I don't know about you, but we're having problems getting people back into the office because they have everything they need at home and they think they now can do their jobs at home. And so, so the hotel experience becomes, and where you stay and how the travel industry kind of moves forward is really that bridge between comfort and comfort zone, right? And so, when us as tour operators are kind of looking for the ideal combination for people, it's not about comfort zone, it's not about the amenities, it's about capturing that local area and that local flavor. And so the news about this is life is not about the destination, it's about the journey, is actually one of the biggest, I guess in America you guys use the term fake news. I know it's a political statement, but Emerson actually never said this. It's one of the biggest crimes on the internet. Even though it's all over in memes, he actually never said this. What he did say was this: to finish the moment, to find the journey's end in every step of the road, to live the greatest number of good hours is wisdom. You see, life is about moments. We're sharing a moment today. And thank goodness we can actually come together again. I came from Canada today, in Canada we have fully masked airports, fully masked flying here, and I came here and it seems like everyone in the U.S. is pretending the pandemic never happened. I'm totally cool with that. I'm ready to move on too, but it was a bit jarring to be at the airport shoulder to shoulder with people when we're still relatively locked up in Canada. But anyways, life is about moments and where you are. It's the moments that we share, but the destination is important of where you share it. So coming out of COVID now, it's really important that we all understand that in the travel industry, that COVID isn't going away. And so, sorry, can I go back one? It worked. They said I just had to say that and miraculously it would go back. So as we emerge out of the pandemic, we all know that COVID is not going away. We just have to learn to live with it. And so this is the best thing, as far as I'm concerned, that has ever happened to the travel industry for my industry, because there's inherent risk to travel, right? And the people that decide to travel, it's because it's important to them. And it's meaningful to them if they're willing to take the risk. If there's any risk at all, it'll be meaningful for them. And so we have to look at travelers very different in the future on why they're going to travel and the purpose for, and being more purposeful on why they're going to travel. And then the destination becomes so much more important. All of our data is showing that people are going to travel longer and deeper moving forward. They're going to stay in destination longer. They're going to take less holidays throughout the year, and they're going to go deeper into the destination. There couldn't be a greater gift to the travel industry coming out of COVID than putting that inherent risk on people and giving them and forcing people to be more purposeful, meaningful when they decide where they want to go. And going back to what we were saying before, which is the destination becomes important because it has to mean something to you, because in order to travel in the future, it's got to be important. So during the pandemic, we did a series called Retravel, which we talked continuously about how the travel industry can come out of this pandemic and be better, and how we can come together as an industry. We had an amazing kind of meetings every month. We had different speakers from all over the world about how the travel industry can finally embrace its ability to be that transformational industry that we've always known it could be. The idea that going on vacation can be your idea of giving back. That is the holy grail for travel as far as I'm concerned. The idea, the world is set up to have an NGO for every one of your values. If it's animal welfare, there's WWF. If it's human rights, there's Amnesty International. If it's disaster relief, there's Red Cross. It's conveniently set up for poverty alleviation, there's UNICEF. But imagine if done right, and tourism was done right, and money stayed back in the communities, and communities were engaged and were part of and part of the value chain. And that's what Last Tourist is about. We're included in the value chain. The idea of going on holiday could be your idea of giving back. And imagine if we were there in the travel industry, that instead of donating money to a charity that's going to do the work for you, going on holiday can create wealth distribution. Because we're heading towards a $10 trillion industry. They say travel is 1 in 10 jobs in the world. It's in the next few years should be a $10 trillion industry. It's the largest form of revenue for the 40 poorest countries in the world. So our most in need countries in the world, tourism is driving the economy. And if done right, we can assist some of the most in need citizens on the planet. And I know in America as well, the idea of it's a hot topic when you talk about poverty or wealth distribution. But the idea of wealth distribution through tourism is a very real thing. There's no vehicle that's better than when someone goes on holiday and you pay for services, fair trade prices and services for for the services that you use locally. I just wanted to mention this because last week in England, in the UK, we won Travel Brand of the Year, and we're pretty proud of it because nobody went because we didn't think we were going to win. So the nominees were TUI, Royal Caribbean, Kuoni, all multi-billion-dollar companies, and G Adventures. And because of all of our retraveled lives and the work that we did during the pandemic, this year G Adventures won Travel Brand in the Year in UK and Europe. So we're pretty proud about that. But if you look about redistributing wealth through tourism, you can see since 1998 until 2018, the amount of destinations that have an international tourism is more than $1 billion. So you can see how tourism is growing. Tourism, as I said, is headed towards a $10 trillion industry. It's an amazing business to be in right now, tourism. And so the business case for tourism is amazing, where it's way ahead of all of its projections prior to COVID in terms of its growth. So if you look at it as a business case, tourism is a great industry to be in. But community tourism is what brings people together. Tourism traditionally has been a one-way experience. People buy an experience, they buy a holiday, and they demand service, and they demand the comforts of home when they travel. And this is the single thing that if we get right in the travel industry, is understanding the privilege that you have and how few people on the planet have the opportunity to say, I want to go on holiday. There's very few people. We are very lucky and we're very privileged. There's a very few group of people that can say, I'm going to go on holiday this year. That you have the disposable income, you have the time, you have the education, whatever it is that we have. We realize that the day you say, I want to go on holiday is a very big decision and a very important one. And community tourism brings communities together. And so, when you decide you want to travel, we found over time, over 32 years, G Adventures has been around for 32 years now, when someone decides to travel, they create a value chain. And the more people we bring into that value chain, the bigger impact we have, and more enriching it is for the traveler and for that transformational experience for customers. So when you look at it, when someone decides to travel, no matter what they do, they create a value chain immediately. And so suddenly their accommodation becomes important. If you're staying at accommodations that isn't locally owned and doesn't have local management and local employees, then you're missing a massive opportunity to have a positive impact in that region. What you eat, where you go, your transportation, everything that you do, the partnerships on the ground, your services that you're provided, everything on the ground becomes part of that value chain. So here are some of the examples that we have, and this is Bikes with Purpose in Belize. I'm just going to give you some examples of how we look at things at G Adventures. This is in Belize where we started. We have 100 community projects around the world through our foundation tied to our programs. This is Bikes with Purpose. We're on an island that we brought travelers for years. There was only 15% of the kids going to school on the island. We created Bikes with Purpose, which is a program that is a biking tour program, and if kids registered in the school, they would get a job with Bikes with Purpose. And they have 90% of their children going to school now. And they do tours with all of our groups that come through the island. So that's an idea of how you can create a social solution and create a great experience for your customers. I'm just going to double click on this because there was a video, but I'm going to move past that. Just look at our transportation. How we look at transportation is very different. In India, the very common arrival transfers, which most of you will just book with a local company, we have Women with Wheels. And Women with Wheels is a program that works with women that are in shelters, that many of them have been abandoned by their families. And we give them an 18-month training program with Women on Wheels. They learn to drive. They get their driver's license, which is very powerful for single women in India. Then they get a car. We give them a car, and they do all of our arrival transfers when you arrive in India. On day 2, when you take a city tour with G-Adventures, it's with the Salam Balak Trust, and that's a street kids home where we take kids at 14 and 15 that are trying to learn English, and they do all of our city tours within Delhi. So that's how you bring others in the community into that supply chain. And even our partners, more of our partnerships. Just before COVID, I was sick of the traditional fam trips where agents kind of all come together and get drunk and want a junket trip to see another country and learn nothing. I was fighting with our salespeople all the time that the traditional fam sucks and says we have to reinvent it. So we created Changemakers. And Changemakers, I led the first 2 Changemakers because I promised, and we did do lectures along the way and visit all of our social enterprises and projects and teach agents along the way the capacity that tourism has to change the world and to have a positive impact and be that force of change. And Changemakers is very successful. We ran our first one to Peru, the second was to India, and I think we had Nepal going and got canceled just before COVID. And we invite agents from all over the industry to take a fam with us now, but it's on Changemakers and they're going to learn something. I think I'm having a great time. They've been very successful. I'm just going to pass that. And when you bring more people in your supply chain, that's what community tourism is about. So it's not now this one-way experience. The one-way experience was created by Nike years ago, where they hired Michael Jordan, before all the technology exists, and Michael Jordan is the best athlete in the world. You walked into a Nike store, you thought of their commercials and Michael Jordan, it made you feel a certain way, so you bought that shirt. Well, we don't live anymore in that kind of economy where it's social. Because now you can follow Phil Knight, you can follow all leaders of any company, you can follow their factories. If they fire people, it all comes up on Glassdoor. So the more people you bring into your value chain, the more impact you have. And suddenly that decision to go on holiday has a positive impact. And then the last slide I'm going to show you here is just an example of some of our partners. We worked with the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank. We were the first travel company to work with the Inter-American Development Bank when they gave us money to build community projects across Latin America. And the last one was our National Geographic Journeys. I love to say this in front of audiences, but National Geographic contacted us one day. They actually reached out to me through LinkedIn. Isn't that weird? And they said, we've been wanting to make our brand more accessible. And we have never found a company that matches our values. So suddenly our values and how we run our business created one of the largest partners we've ever had in National Geographic globally, and we created the National Geographic Journeys, which is available. But it was how our values grew our partnerships, and it was our value chain as we brought more and more partners into it, which has made what made G-Adventure special and made us the travel brand of the year this year in Europe. So thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your conference.